Welcome to Slope Reliability, the show where we learn about reliability, observability, and resilience one day at a time. I'm your host, Stephen Townsend. Welcome back to Slope Reliability. I'm Stephen Townsend, and this is the show where we learn about reliability and observability and resilience one day at a time. Today, I'm joined by another podcaster, Colette Alexander. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Colette is the president of the Resilience and Software Foundation and co-host of the This Is Fine podcast about resilience engineering in the world of technology. She's also an accomplished rock cellist and mum, and currently lives in Rhode Island. She's worked at HashiCorp, Cognite, is that right? You say?
Yeah.
Cognite? Well, I'm saying everything right today. Spotify, IBM, HP Cloud, and various engineering, management, and director positions. And she has a Master of Science from Lund University in Human Factors and Systems Safety. Colette, hello. How are you?
Hi. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm a little unwell, and it's 7 a.m, so my eyes are just sort of still trying to adjust to reality. But other than that, I'm pretty well. How about you?
I'm okay. I'm a little under the weather. My children gave me a cold. And the best part about when your children give you colds is that they also wake you up all the time in the middle of the night. So it's like,
Perfect.
not only did they give me a cold, but so it is not 7 a.m. for me, but it might sound like it is for those of you listening.
Classic children. That's all they do. Wake you up. Yeah. I just wanted to say, life is busy. There's only so much content a person can consume. There are only 2 podcasts that I listen to every single episode of, and This Is Fine is one of them.
Oh, wow. That's a huge compliment. I know what it is. I know what it is to be obsessive. I've been listening to Slate Reliability's back catalog a lot in the last couple months, I want to say. I'm a huge fan. It's really fun to listen to. So it's nice to be here. Let's be here. Hang out.
Glad you're here. And next week, we're recording this now, but by the time people hear this, it would have already happened. But next week is 2 weeks from now, is the 100th episode of Slow Reliability with John Allspar on the show.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, John's an old timer. He's been on our podcast twice. I feel like we should give him the title of honorary co-host. Just kind of shows up and does stuff. He's great to have on. I hope that was a good combo.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, good. Such a nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So today's theme, burnout.
Yeah.
Which I know you've spoken about on This Is Fine as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I love that. Like I'm like the Resilience and Software Foundation, but like you already talked to John. Hopefully you talked to him about resilience engineering. So what's left to talk about? Burnout, huh? Those are the 2 things that I'm pretty qualified to talk about. Yeah.
I use the term burnout all the time. And because I've gone through a thing related to work which my mental and physical health suffered immensely. And I call that my extreme burnout period, right? And I noticed that I've gone through similar but smaller scale experiences throughout my career relating to work and the way that I'm interfacing with work. As someone who's probably a little bit more researched than I am in this, how do you what is burnout?
What is burnout? Well, so I should caveat this by saying we recently did an episode on burnout because I myself am on a leave right now from work because I was extremely burned out. And so I've been talking about it a little bit more. What's interesting is that the number 1 book that I've read about burnout that has given me the most useful information, I actually read like 5 years ago or something. It was a while ago. And I've been reading it on leave kind of to brush up a little bit on like understanding what it is. It's by a couple of sisters, the Nagoski sisters. Emily Nagoski is one of the sisters. And one of them is a doctor. And so the book is written as a very practical book for like lay people, but it references a lot of science in it. And what I can say is burnout is a real physiological thing. And a lot of people don't understand that. Like but it is based in real science, and it's kind of fundamentally about your body being so deeply over chronically stressed and unable to what the Nagoski sisters refer to it as like breaking, like finishing the cycle. Not breaking the cycle, but finishing the cycle of stress in your body. And if you aren't able to do that, or the stress is too high that any kind of attempt that you make at completing the cycle of stress they discuss isn't enough, then you will eventually, like, your batteries just drain and you're toast.
Yeah.
And it can manifest in very different ways depending on the person, but it's all in response to essentially the same physiological situation, which is that your body is having a stress response. Our stress responses are ancient, really. They're genetically encoded in us from like fight or flight. Like, you may have heard of this, right? Where you're like, and I'm not like an Evo psych person. I think those people are bullshit. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Okay. But it does kind of evoke, we do need to kind of go back to like our bodies evolved to deal with stressors in a particular way, right? And those stressors at a certain time were like, the Nagoski sisters talk about like fighting a lion or getting chased by a lion, right? And like running back to your village. And like the idea is that something evokes a stress response in you because it's marked as danger, or it's marked as, right? And you need to get away from it. And often that involves physical activity. And that actually is required to unwind the stress response. And there are certain things that you're also required to have, like community, and, you can also use a creative outlet or something that helps reframe your body, but you usually need to have some kind of physical response to the stress in order to close the cycle. And so now in the year of our Lord 2025, a lot of us experience stress differently than that, right? We can experience stress at work through dealing with situations that are, make us feel unsafe in all sorts of ways, right? Or where we have to suppress responses maybe to some people or some situations because of how we're the sort of situation we're in, right? And that set of sort of things that we have to accomplish in our day, that stress, our body doesn't know the difference. It's not experiencing that stress differently than it experienced the lion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it requires the same set of things to sort of complete the cycle, but we often aren't able to complete the cycle, whether that's because, you can't run it off every single time you experience a jerk at work, right? And even if you can, like, say, run at the end of every single day, it's rare that somebody could do that, right? Like have a huge physical set of activities. Like you still might be experiencing so much stress that it doesn't even really matter, right?
Yeah.
So burnout is essentially a continued pattern, physiologically, a continued pattern of that stress response not receiving adequate closure.
Mm.
And your body responding to that. It builds up and builds up and builds up. And can I ask you about your burnout? Did you
Sure.
experience like physical symptoms when you?
Yeah, and that was that's the thing that surprised me the most. It was I actually didn't consciously know or recognize what was going on. It was just all physical at first, and it took me time to then digest why this was happening and what were the things happening at work, and why was I responding this way. But the physical things for me were, well, the biggest one was insomnia. So first of all, I couldn't get to sleep till quite late. So I normally go to sleep about 10:30. I was going to lying down at 10:30 and getting to sleep at 12:30 maybe, and then I'd wake up at 3. And that happened night after night after night. And that's one thing. How do I describe it? Like an agitation in my body at all times, like this kind of almost buzzing, shaking sensation all through my body and like ringing in my ears. I also at that time, I actually had a thing in my vision, like blocking. It was like, when you stare at a torch or something or the sun for a second and you get a little thing in your eye. And that was there. And I got tested, and I actually had like a little bubble in the back of my retina. And they said that's a
Huh.
stress response. And they said if
Wow.
you don't get on top of it, it's going to do permanent damage to your eye. So that was a real wake-up call.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you, out of sorry, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions.
That's all
Out
right.
of curiosity, like you said you didn't really know that you were experiencing it. Is that because you didn't register your feelings during the moments like that you were experiencing stress? You didn't register it as stress? Like were you having moments at work, I guess is my question, where you had like an adrenal response? Because I feel like I could tell sometimes I could tell, not all times, but a lot of times I could tell that I had an adrenal response. Sometimes I couldn't. What was funny is I got this stupid smartwatch and it started telling me, how they do like your heart rate is indicating that you are, they do these like little warning things when it's like something's different about right now. You should pay attention to how you're feeling. And I started getting that every morning right before I went to work. Even
That's a
though I
good
was
time.
like, what? I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I don't know what's going on. But I'm curious, did you feel like adrenaline at times, or did you feel worn down by things at work?
I was having adrenaline every single day, multiple times. Starting work, sometimes just seeing a message pop up from a certain person, meetings with executives. Oh my goodness, because I was just a lowly worker on the ground floor at this time. Meetings with certain people, emails coming through, constantly throughout the day. But still, like, it's weird. I guess I was doing this mental gymnastics with myself, saying, I'm like, not really acknowledging that I'm feeling these things and saying, but it's just work. Like, if it's only because I care. If I don't care, if I just detach myself, it'll be fine. But not realizing it doesn't work that way. You can't just detach yourself from it.
No, no. And I think, first of all, I think that what makes us good at our jobs is often that we care, right? And that if the answer to not burning out at your job is to suck at your job, then like there's something wrong with the system that is not you, right? But that's probably a sign that we need to fix work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I got eye twitches. That was like my weird
Oh
thing
yes,
that
I
started
got the same thing.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got eye twitches and that was really weird. I was like, what is happening to my body? I got eye twitches and then I started having like the worst. I started having like panic attacks before meetings. I would have to like put my head between my legs
Wow.
and like breathe deeply to like get to a meeting. The Nagoski sisters go through in their book. There's a lot of different ways we fight, we flight, or we freeze, right? And so some people, when they burn out, they actually get kind of jerky. They like start lashing out and like weird. And I'm either lucky or not lucky in the sense that like I think that happened a couple times, but I'm not really built that way. I don't really take it out on people. But the freezing is a thing that I experienced towards the end too, which was before I took my break, which was like just kind of disassociating. Just and that can be like staring at your phone or like I would like watch YouTube videos of like whatever, just like in the middle of the day because I just couldn't. I just felt like a zombie.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, as we're having this conversation, I'm actually having a real like intense response to it. Like,
Oh,
it's 5 years ago or 4.5 years ago, this happened, this intense experience. And I remember I recorded in my previous podcast, Performance Time, a very raw recording of myself in the moment saying, this is what's happening, just honest, open. And I listened to it last night. And ever since then, I've been a bit fucked up.
oh,
Simultaneously, I've realized I've come a long way because I'm dealing with much more pressure now and I'm dealing with it better than I was then. But at the same time,
since recording the burnout episode of This Is Fine, where I talk pretty openly about my burnout, I've had a lot of really wonderful exchanges with people who have thanked me for talking openly about it.
yeah.
And I think part of it in tech, right? If I can sort of roll back my brain to around about the time where I started considering like, hey, maybe I need to take some leave. The things that were going through my head were, gosh, you make so much money. You are so overprivileged. You've got this beautiful house, a beautiful family, and you've got this crazy job where you get to like, you know, be in charge of a bunch of stuff. And, you know, what right do you have to think this way or be this fucked up? And like, look at all these other people who are, by the way, some of the people who are very, what I would call very triggering for me in terms of my burnout. I look at them and I'm like, well, they're fine. Like they're functioning fine, clearly. And I think it's important to remember, like, your body doesn't care about any of that. Your body doesn't know your socio-political landscape or place in it. Your body just knows the stress. And your body, it turns out, is the boss. Like, without your body, we're not like yet in the Black Mirror space, right? We can't like upload our brains to live on forever in the cloud. So your body's in charge, man.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't care about other people or about how privileged you are or aren't or anything. It just cares that like you're going through this thing every day, and beating yourself up over the fact that you're going through it isn't gonna fix it. It's only gonna make only gonna make your stress worse. So and I also think like there's something fundamentally flawed in our work culture, in the way that we treat people, in the way that the things that we expect of people. And I think especially people who are in management positions, in situations where, you know, we find ourselves responsible essentially for the careers of multiple people, right? And I think it can be really difficult to live with the cognitive dissonance of, you know, expecting performance and results and managing all of those things while also taking care of yourself and the people around you.
Yeah. I think, I definitely feel since becoming a manager a year and a half ago, an increased sense of responsibility. Like if I'm not there, it's not just me and maybe the project which is impacted. It's these people who kind of depend on me. I'm their support person in some ways. Hopefully I'm not one of those leaders where people depend on me for things, but I feel responsible for them and their work and their well-being. Yeah. So it's an extra layer of pressure of I want to be there for them, but man, sometimes for me it's flight. I don't feel fight. I definitely freeze, but it's more flight. I just want to take a day off. But then I think, well, then I'll come back tomorrow and it'll be even worse because it's like another day of emails and chat messages and things that have progressed, you know?
Yeah. And flight also manifests as like anxiety, and that's the flight mechanism, right? Fight is much more like the anger side of the spectrum. And like freeze is like total disassociation, right? And you can experience any of those things at any given time as part of your stress response.
Speaking of the disassociation and the freezing, my wife watched a reel last night. She told me all about it, about how people that watch the same TV shows and movies over and over again, it's actually a way of emotional regulation. And I do it all the time. I never noticed it. I've watched the Survivor TV series all the way through 5 times, like all 40-something
Wow.
seasons. Yeah. I don't know why.
It's impressive.
It's like
These days, all
food.
I watch over and over again is Bluey.
Really? Because of kids?
Because I have children.
I was thinking about what causes burnout, and I guess it's different for each kind of person. And one of the things that Michelle Casey, who by the time this year's will have spoken twice on the episode, I mentioned she thinks there's something about systems thinkers that it's very easy to, when you are aware of the real complexity of the systems that you work in, it can be quite overwhelming, especially when you're working with people who maybe don't see that complexity and still think of the world in a deterministic way and are expecting things to progress in a deterministic way. I don't know.
I think that's true. I mean, I think Cassandra is a myth for a reason, right? And like Cassandra, you know, she sees the end of the world and nobody believes her. And I think it's like, if you are a systems thinker, often you probably see a lot of things that are wrong, or a lot of things and how they're connected to what will be wrong in the future. And it's very hard it both can feel, I think, impossible to fix, right? Because you can't fix something by yourself like that. And also hard if you feel like you're alone in that, in what you see, or if you're isolated in what you see. So like important people in power don't see what you see, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I buy that.
The other one is obviously, for me, context switching and cognitive load is huge. And I read an article a few years ago, a colleague, an ex-colleague of mine, Carl Laird, shared it with me, about the importance of slack time at work. It's that we used to have a lot more of it. I think as we get less and less over the years, this time progresses. It's like we have to be productive and doing stuff all the time. And without that, I've got half a day and no meetings and nothing I have to do. Let's just think about how things are going. And, how can we be better? And, I think we miss that. And without that slack time, I think that definitely adds to my stress levels, because there's not that ability to take a breath and just reflect. I don't know. There's something about that. I don't know how to articulate it.
I think that's very true. There's a really good book that was the first book that I read on my leave by Jenny Odell called How to Do Nothing. And it's separate from work in terms of like but it's about how our brains need space to just disconnect, and not in a like I'm consuming the media or but more like daydream, or that actually like we need these things in order to feel like ourselves and to process what we're doing, even if we don't consciously process during that time,
Yeah.
But that's like, it's also very critical in the creative process. And I think this other piece of me, right? I spent all my 20s being a cellist in rock bands. And so I feel a little bit more of an expert in this realm. But, what we do is fundamentally creative. You and I are not in a field as much as like, capitalism would beg to differ in terms of how much more money people in tech make than your average musician. But like, we are in fields where we have to create something from nothing. And even as managers, we have to connect with people and inspire them and help them problem solve. A lot of times in situations that have never happened before, right? And that requires a great deal of creativity. And anybody who's in a creative field will tell you need lots and lots of slack time to process, to learn, to think, to get distracted, to do all sorts of, to be successful when you're creating, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we overplay the value of the sort of conscious, aware mind and underplay how powerful that sort of subconscious part is, and giving that space to do its thing. There's so many things we do as humans which they just happen, and it's amazing, and we can figure stuff out so quickly. But not if you're like forcing yourself to try and solve the problem. You got to give yourself space for the genius to come through. Yeah.
Well, and I just find it so, these like people who are writing blogs or whatever about like optimizing their fucking workday. Like, I'm sorry, but it's just like, I don't know about you, but like, I have great ideas in the shower. That's not part of my workday. I have great ideas when I'm like playing with my son, or like, actually, I think one of the most sort of huge jumps I made as a manager was having toddlers and like learning how to deal with them as like, okay, like this helps me have more empathy for people who are in this situation, and I think it's like, nobody's paying me for my expertise in being a mom, but like, it's still part of who I am. And it's not like I bring some wholly separate self to work, And it's like, you're paying me from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.? That's like not a thing, man. You're paying me for my brain and the value I add to the company, ostensibly, which is fully grounded in everything I am all day, every day, even when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, I mean, so the book Radical Candor, there are things in it which are maybe a little controversial. But there's one thing that I do really like about it, which is the idea that we don't have our work life and our personal life. We are ourselves at work, and the more of ourselves we bring to work, the better. Because why spend a third of your life or more doing this thing where you're not, cutting off from who you are? Like, what a bizarre situation that would be.
Well, yeah, I mean, they just made a really great TV show about it for Apple Plus, which is Severance.
Yeah.
And Severance is a wonderful allegory for the idea that I think some people have subscribed to, which is like, oh, it's just I'm going to work, so I'm going to literally be a different person at work or cut myself off or, you know.
So I guess we have a sort of idea of burnout, and we've gone a little bit about through the symptoms and the kinds of things that contribute to it. One thing we haven't gone into much detail is the inability to have maybe control or influence over things that really matter to you. That's something that's really got me in the past, and recently, and I don't know whether this is a good thing or not, but I've been really trying to be conscious about circles of control and circle of influence and the things that are outside that, trying to let those things go. And it's easier said than done. And I think there's a line between I'm just going to focus on the stuff I can control, but sometimes those things out there are super important, and I want to care still. And I want to, I don't want to disengage for those things completely, but I have to protect myself. So do you think there's a balance, or if you're in that situation and it's really, really bugging you, if maybe you're in the wrong situation?
Yeah. So two things, right? One is that burnout is not from working too much. Burnout is from a stress response that you're having to a situation, likely at work. And this, certainly in my case, that was what it was. And it's often about not being able to make headway or have an impact, or like it could be to a particular set of people you have to interact with. It could be all kinds of things, right? But it's not, crucially, it's not about like overworking. It's not about working too many hours.
Yeah.
It's about, you're trying to accomplish something and you are being blocked from being able to accomplish it, or to feel like you can have an impact, or to feel like you are valued, right? I think all of those things, right? There's a fundamental sort of set of needs that people have. Natalie Rothfels wrote Why You're So Angry at Work. And she wrote about all these different needs that you have, connection, autonomy, agency, clarity, security, belonging, dignity, respect, competence, growth, fairness, collaboration. Probably, I'm guessing, if we have these sets of needs, right, at work, and they're met to different levels, to different degrees, but if one of them isn't met at all, or if we're in like danger red zones for many of them, probably we're at risk for burnout. So that's something that needs to kind of get covered front and center about burnout, I think. And then I think there is a, well, why do you care? Why do you, can you lessen the amount of fucks you give, right? I'm all out of fucks to give today. I've had multiple people at different points in my life. Once my therapist was like, Colette, can't you just like do 50% good at work, like for a little while? And I was like, have you met me? You've been my therapist for like 6 years now,
Yeah.
And I also have had, someone near and dear to me recently started doing fractional work and was like, what's great about being like fractional or consulting, right? Which is like, you can kind of parachute in and like, you have a scope of work and that's what you care about. And like, you can look at all the dysfunction and you could be like, not my problem. I'm here to do this thing and here's the thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's, you should do that or something. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I think a lot of this is what might work for somebody wouldn't work for somebody else. And I truly think that for burnout, like the physical symptoms are the same and the manifestations of the whys probably are rooted in the same fundamental, those core needs, right, that we have at work.
Yeah.
But I think the solution is probably different for different people. And it depends on who you are and what kinds of scenarios you would thrive in. I have recently thought, like, do I need to work at a startup? Do I just need to work at a place where Uh, I have a better relationship with leadership, let's say. Do I just need to work in a smaller company? Like, there are all kinds of things that go through my head of like, what is the right way to sort of fix this problem?
Yeah.
I think that's an individual thing.
I don't think there's a checklist of things that anyone can do to also negotiate their way through burnout and come out the other side. And I think also burnout is it's a process. It's not a thing you fix and move on from. It probably comes in waves. It's a thing you understand. I don't know, man. For me, I realize I have like chronic anxiety. That is just part of who I am. I'm never going to not be an anxious person. It's about how I manage that.
Mm.
But I think there are some things that have helped at different times. I'll speak for myself. A couple of things that have helped. One is I did actually, when it got really bad, I did change my role in the company. And I said, like, I can't be on this project anymore. It's killing me. And my boss was like, I understand, and pulled me out immediately. And so I was really thankful for that. And he put me on less, kind of more tactical, smaller scale work. And that made a huge difference. And then I changed out of the performance engineering world into a different role, which is the SRE stuff that started this podcast. And here we are. It actually helped me in a lot of different ways. The second thing is when it got really bad, medication. Sleeping pills, for one, that's a tactical thing. And I still continue to have a small batch. And just knowing they're there helps me sleep.
Yeah.
And I also went on anti-anxiety medication for a period of time. Helped just dull everything, like not dull everything, but sort of dampen the intensity of everything. So yeah, like, and I just wish I'd gone to the doctor sooner. Like,
yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, I didn't wear my Klonopin sweatshirt, but I do have one. Absolutely, there are a lot of different tactics you can take. What I will say is about that is we live in a really fucked up system because ideally somebody would have multiple choices, right? To be like, I'm going to take medication and see if that works. I'm going to do meditation and see if I'm going to try and see if that works. And then also be able to say, and I can't do this job. Like, I can't do this job anymore. But a lot of people, I think, feel stuck in their work and don't know what else to do. Partly because our identities are often tied up in our work. I believe my line to my therapist 2 weeks into my leave was, yeah, work was doing a lot of work for me. It was like masking a lot of like depression and anxiety and things that I just wasn't dealing with, but also like, it's nice to be able to say, well, I have to work. Like, I have to make money. I have to.
Okay. Is there anything, let's say there's a person who they pretty much can't leave the role they're in now, but they're experiencing the signs of burnout. To this meditation, I know someone who that meditation has just unlocked a whole world of things for them. It doesn't work for me at all. I've tried. It's not my thing. Is there anything else that they might be able to do to try and work through that?
I mean, I cannot, like, the best thing I did, and what I tell anybody, especially who's a manager, it's my only piece of advice for people who are new to managers, is if you don't have a therapist already, get one. Because I think that what you need is much like what I tell teams that are struggling to like figure out how to improve is to do a retro regularly. If you don't have that reflective mechanism of somebody there to support you and help you, and a sort of break that you can take in your week to say, okay, like, I'm going to work on me now, then it's almost going to be impossible to do anything else for yourself, right? To have any other kind of perspective. So, I mean, I would definitely, if someone thinks that they're and like, try to look up, if you don't have the money or you don't have the health insurance, unfortunately in the US is very bad at covering therapists, but like, there are ways to get low cost therapists, or there are ways to get reimbursed for therapy, like after the fact, often in the US through like out of network stuff. I just recommend, like, don't take the easy way out of like, oh, seems like it's going to be hard. Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, really try to get one, because that will ground you in whatever journey you're going to go on that will help you. Right. And the Nagoski sisters say, like, you have to find some outlet, that run mechanism, right? So physical activity is the best, easiest, most like shortcutty way to close the cycle. Again, it might not be enough based on
Sure.
what you're experiencing or what's built up in your body or what's going on, but it's at least a good start. And I think like the other pieces that they recommend are like community. So they call it, I was just reading it the other day again. It's like a love, like you just need a love fest. You just need
Yeah.
someone to hug you and like, tell you that you're amazing and remind you how great you are. And you need people to connect with, to talk to, you can relate to, who relate to you. And then a creative outlet, I think, is another huge one, which is like when we are in creative spaces, there's like a regenerative thing that happens where, and that was fundamentally why I founded the foundation that I did and why I started podcasting was I knew I had this sense of like, I'm getting really burned out at work again. Like I need to be able to make something that like I have control over from beginning to end. That is like a thing that I can put out in the world and say like, I did this thing,
I think that's probably why I do so many creative things. I've got 2 podcasts now, and I'm part of a bunch of groups doing tabletop role-playing games, and I run campaigns and stuff as well, because that's
That's awesome.
stuff. Yeah. And it's weird because I'm doing more stuff with my mind, but I feel more balanced.
Right. It helps. It's like you're spinning your wheels, but not in place, like they're moving you forward with something. And I think that that's really important if you feel like you're spinning your wheels and you're not moving anywhere at work,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Colette, for coming on the show and talking about burnout. It's something that's really important to me. In fact, reflecting earlier this year or late last year, so many of the choices that I've made in my career in the last 5 years have been because I suffered a lot and I actually saw other people suffering. And when I shared my story, people connected with me and told me their stories. And most of the choices that I've made in my career have been about how can I contribute to work in a way which is preventing that kind of suffering in myself and others in the future. It's actually sort of shaped a lot of my focus in life and career and job is how can we do this in a better way that's more enjoyable and more creative and more connected. And I don't know, it's actually added more meaning to my work, I think. But yeah,
well,
so I think it's really important.
Thanks for having me. This has been my own burnout has been a huge journey and not the least of which has been hearing other people talk about theirs and understanding how much of a prevalent problem it is, especially in tech. And so, I hope people feel like they can reach out and talk about it with one another, or at least with us, I guess.
Yeah. My door is open if anyone wants to come and chat about it.
Yeah, same.
So everyone out there, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.